Have you ever almost died? Tell your stories of near-death experiences. When I was very young, maybe 6 to 8 years old, I was sitting on my dad's lap and we were driving a tractor around our farm. I feel my feet getting hot and I complain to my dad about it. He says, "Oh crap," and jumps off the tractor with me in his arms. Then, I kid you not, no more than 2 seconds after we jumped off, the tractor explodes in a huge ball of fire. When my dad said "oh crap," he had seen a small flame in the engine, through a grill under our feet. The flame ignited what I assume was the gas tank and exploded like nothing I have ever seen in my life. The heat was immense and it was a very loud explosion. I live in Australia and this happened in a season of severe drought. The long dry grass caught fire instantly and blew across the landscape fast. I was in shock and crying. My dad seemed stunned too. The blaze swept across the land and continued into a line of gum trees, which set ablaze. The area we were in was about 500 meters from the homestead and we had to call for help over the noise of the fire. My grandfather, who was here at the time, drove down the road and picked us up. Then rang the country fire department, and from then it took 6 large fire trucks 4 hours to extinguish the spreading fire. I went down to the site the next day to see what was left of the tractor, and left behind was a blackened steel frame and a puddle of melted red plastic covering the ground. My mom and dad divorced when I was 3 and mother married a meth head after that. They were going to a farm to steal some ammonia. They were making and selling meth. I had no idea what was going on. I was only 6 when this happened, but I wanted to go with them instead of being left alone at the trailer again. So we get to this farm at the butt crack of dawn and Charles slips out with a jug and a cooler. He comes back, peels out of there with the ammonia in the floorboard. The fumes filled the single cab truck and I couldn't breathe. I was flailing and gasping, but they wouldn't open the windows for fear that the cops would smell it going 100 down the highway. I remember seeing black splotches in my vision before passing out. The next thing I remember is my face being pressed to the little back window and breathing sweet, clean air again. We got home and I just slept for hours. This happened in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, within a few days, and was the most terrifying moment of my life. That me and my sister are still alive and with our family is amazing. My sister and I were throwing a baseball in the front yard when my sister threw it badly and I had to go chase it. Well, where I was going to get the ball I could see her, but a truck pulled up and I'm assuming couldn't see me. Then a man jumped out, grabbed my sister and jumped back into the truck. Unbeknownst to me, my dad also saw, but I took off running after the truck. I was only 15 at the time, but I played many sports and was quite athletic, and for whatever reason the truck stopped at the end of the street just long enough for me to reach it and open the door. I grabbed my sister, who is fighting with the man in the front seat, but in the process of pulling on her I pull him out too and we start fighting. I tell my sister to run and she does, but I can't get away from the man. The driver walks around and tells me I've made a huge mistake, and points a gun right in my face. All of a sudden I hear my dad bellow, "Drop it or I'll kill you both," with his shotgun aimed at the guy's chest. The guy I'm wrestling with lets go and jumps in the truck, but the other guy was not so lucky. He rounded the truck with the gun still in his hand and my dad shot. My dad says he barely nicked him just to get the point across, but the man screamed, dropped the gun, jumped in the truck and took off. As he drove off, Dad shot the truck so cops could identify it easier. There was a significant amount of blood where the guy had been shot. Also, just to give you an idea of what things are like when the government is broken, we called the cops, and after hearing that we were okay they told us sorry, but they had bigger things to deal with. TLDR, my sister was almost kidnapped. I pulled her out of the truck but got a gun pulled on me. Dad shot guy who pulled gun on me. We ended up okay. It was after Katrina and the police were too busy to respond after we called. Background: back when I was in 6th grade, I was unfortunate enough to get Burkitt's lymphoma. Chemo is the usual treatment, and along with that, part of the chemo is to get spinal taps to protect and test the spinal cord. It is important to note that I was also a freakishly large 6th grader at just under 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds. So the events went down like this. On a particular spinal tap they were giving me, I was resisting the anesthesia they had given me. I attribute this to me being huge and the children's hospital just not having to deal with kids this large usually, and they had to up the dosage. Not a problem, I got knocked out fine and the procedure went as planned. Fast forward to the next time I needed to get one. Before they put me under, the doctor had mentioned that it was her first time doing one solo and that she was really excited. She read my chart, pumped me full of anesthesia, and did the procedure. The problem is this: when the doctor looked at how much knockout juice they gave me the last time, she looked at the total amount they gave me and gave it to me at once instead of spread out over the hour or however long the first tap went. The next thing I remember is being very groggy and just wanting to go back to sleep, but the nurse, doctor, now sobbing, anesthesiologist and my mom were all trying to get me to stay awake. I was pissed and just wanted to take a nap, but they were having none of it. I found out later that my heart slowed way down, my blood pressure dropped significantly, and apparently I was about as close to dead as you can get without being dead. The doctor apologized over and over to both me and my mother. And that's how I got unlimited ice cream at the hospital. TLDR, rookie doctor drugs 12-year-old and almost kills him. Ice cream and tears ensue. A couple of winters ago I went out drinking with my roommates, and all night afterwards I felt like absolute crap. Headache, vomiting, sweating profusely, extremely disoriented with auditory hallucinations. In my confused state I'd figured it was just the alcohol or food poisoning or something, but in the morning I'd discovered that the same thing happened to everybody else in the house. Turns out the chimney for our heater had gotten clogged and was leaking carbon monoxide into the house all night while we slept. The maximum safe ppm for CO is something like 24 parts per million. I ran out and got a detector, and it immediately started chirping with a readout of over 800 parts per million. The gas works guys wouldn't even step back into the house after they took their reading, and according to them we probably shouldn't have lived through the night, and would definitely all be dead if we'd spent another few hours in the house. Moral of the story: buy a damn carbon monoxide detector if you don't already have one. Carjacked by a guy who had just robbed an auto store. This was December of 2002. I had just gotten done dropping my then wife off at the airport. She was flying back to California for Christmas. I stopped by Wendy's on the way because nothing says woo-woo a week of peace and quiet like 2 junior bacon cheeseburgers. Unknown to me, at about this time, 3 people were robbing an auto parts store in Georgetown, Texas. Georgetown is a small town north of Austin and Round Rock but still very much a suburb of Austin. These 3 pistol whipped the clerks, stole money, and stole a vehicle to get away. They proceed to go down south on I-35 from Georgetown to Austin. One of the clerks flagged down a passing cop and pointed out the stolen vehicle, so by this time the 3 idiots had 2 cop cars in pursuit of them. Meanwhile, I was driving northbound on the frontage road of I-35. The frontage road was moving much faster than the freeway was, and I kind of dig riding the frontage roads. This was also the last Friday before Christmas that year, so I suspect we had a lot more traffic than normal. The suspects hit a traffic jam on southbound I-35 and traffic literally came to a halt. 2 of the suspects jumped out of the car and over the center divider. Multiple officers did the same thing, giving pursuit. 1 cop shattered his ankle while landing because it was about an 8-foot drop. The 3rd guy gave up in the car. I was about to meet a guy with a gun. About this time I saw a sheriff's deputy running southbound on the northbound shoulder. Traffic in front of me came to a standstill and so did I. At this point I saw the cop stop about 60 feet away and draw his gun. I turn my head to see someone standing at my door. He reaches into his waistband, pulls out a gun, puts it to my head and says, "Get out of the fucking car." Meanwhile the deputy is yelling, "Drop the gun, get down, etc., etc." As I was getting out of the car and the carjacker was getting in, he put the gun to the back of my head. Sheriff then fired the first shot. It hit the carjacker in the shoulder and knocked the gun away from my head. They then started exchanging shots with each other. I hit the deck and then, realizing how close I was to the action, got up, ran like hell for the grass and dropped there. The 3rd guy kept running all the way to Mexico. He has never been caught. Suspect got hit 3 times. He was hit in the shoulder, head and through the hand. The shot to the head entered the front of his head and went around the outside of the skull and exited the back of his head. Didn't pierce his skull at all. And for a little bit of karma justice, he additionally got shrapnel from my dashboard in his stomach as it exploded from the gunfire. I survived with glass in my head and a new lease on life. Afghanistan. Homemade explosive went off under our striker. I'm told it was approximately 200 pounds of the stuff. My squad leader sitting in the seat next to me is killed by the blast. 2 others lose both legs. Guy across from me has bones in all of his limbs and several vertebrae broken. The person who was killed had traded spots with me so he could take a piss not a few minutes before the explosion. I'm still dealing with the guilt. Although one of my feet got jacked up pretty good and the army is kicking me out because of it, I still feel like I have no place to complain, and I try to live my life more fully and be a better person in honor of the man who died instead of me. One February day 10 years ago, a younger, 11 years old, and nerdier version of me was walking home from school together with a few classmates. The temperature had been around 0 degrees Celsius for the last week. Some days above, resulting in thawing of the still thick layer of snow, and some days right below, refreezing the water, creating extremely slippery roads. As we were walking uphill, happy that the school was over for the day, some of the cooler kids started to throw snowballs at each other. Suddenly they decided to all gang up on the smallest amongst the group, me. As the snowballs flew towards me through the air, I flinched and took a step backwards, slipped on a spot of ice and fell out on the road. As I spin around 180 degrees in midair, I can see the old Volvo just a few meters from me, heading in my direction, downhill, on an icy road. As I fall on my stomach and close my eyes in fear of what I think will be my death, I can hear the brakes screeching and my classmates screaming, and suddenly I feel something bump into my backpack and pushes a foot downhill. After a moment of complete silence, me thinking I was dead, I finally realize I wasn't, and I dared to open my eyes. All I see is the dark rubber of a wheel, inches away from my face. My backpack, or rather the amount of school books in my backpack, saved me by getting hit the front of the car with enough force to push me to safety, leaving my head intact. Without those extra 5 inches on my back, my brain would have ended up as a puddle of red jello on the road. And thanks to the old man in the car, slowing down to 5 mph when passing playing schoolchildren, being fast enough on the brakes, and having put on brand new winter tires for the season. TLDR, do your homework, kids, it might save your life. I was technically dead for a while, don't even know how long, though I was never pronounced dead by a doc. By the time a doc saw me, the Coast Guard had revived me. I've posted the story before, but it seems fitting, so I'll throw it in here again. Was windsurfing at a local competition, out of my league, in really cold water without the right wetsuit and overpowered. I'd rigged up a sail way too big for the wind speeds we were seeing. Was way off to the side, out of view practicing, tried a move I'd never pulled off before and took my mast to the side of the head, knocking me out cold. I was wearing a life jacket. I usually don't, but this competition required them. Needless to say, now I rarely go out without one. Anyway, long story short, I remember coming to, didn't know how long I'd been out, but I was severely hypothermic, tried swimming to shore but was too far out and blacked out again, from the cold this time. Another competitor came across my drifting rig, knew it was bad and went straight to shore to tell the organizers. They in turn tell the Coast Guard, who eventually pulled me out of the water. By then I didn't have a pulse. They start CPR and thankfully had a defib, gave me the zap, and now I get to tell the story about how my own stupidity actually killed me. Don't know if it's related, but after the zap I developed an interesting spiral pattern in my chest hair that I still have now. Probably not related, but I like to think it is. As for the whole light thing, didn't see anything, just felt really tired and felt myself slipping away. Best analogy I can think of is one of those really boring long lectures for a class you didn't even like when you were hungover. You really don't want to fall asleep, but no matter how hard you fight it, you just keep fading into slumber. Holy crap. I have that pattern too and had no idea how I got it, but now the truth came flashing to me. When I was a lad, I was shocked by a mangled plug connected to the mains that I grabbed carelessly, 220 V2, Italy here, and got the scare of my life. Then I hit puberty and started growing this weird spiral of hair and went all, what the frick is this? Now I know why. Thanks. Not killed, but almost died. I was coming home from a run a few summers ago, and I noticed my feet were really itchy. I'm talking, take your shoes off in the middle of the sidewalk so you can scratch your feet, kind of itchy. I didn't know what was happening, so when I got home I hopped in the shower in case I had ran through some sort of brush that had given me some sort of reaction. Everything becomes blurry and I can't see properly anymore. I get out of the shower and realize my eyes are swelling shut. And then I realize my throat is closing too. This had never happened to me before, so I call my dad. Dads know what to do in every situation. He works 5 minutes from my house, but by the time he gets to me I have less than half my airway left. My body was covered in hives and my one eye was swollen shut, with the other one almost out of commission too. I was so scared I began saying my goodbyes to my dad. By the time we get to the hospital, I have maybe 20% of my airway left. As soon as they gave me the adrenaline, the swelling began going down and I was good again. Turns out I'm allergic to exercise. Shut up, it's an actual. Link to the article in the description. Not sure of whether I was going to be murdered or assaulted. Probably murdered, considering I am a guy. A few years ago I decided to walk home from a joint 18th birthday party to avoid the taxi fare, as I was a broke high school student. I estimated the time to walk home to be about 20 minutes, in which I hoped would help me sober up. 15 minutes in I finally reached my street. My street to this day is still very poorly lit, even under the already few street lights is it difficult to check your watch. I quickly glance at my phone to check the time just so I could guesstimate how long it would take before I would be reunited with my glorious bed. As I look back up I see a tinge of orange light slowly moving. I guess while inebriated I found this light mildly fascinating, so I was fixated on it for a short period. Before I knew it I came upon the source, which happened to be a very tall and lanky, topless junkie smoking a cigarette. My heart jumps, but I suppress all physical reactions to the best of my ability and carry on. A few seconds later I can't help but think about what I just saw. This extremely scummy looking guy is standing around topless at 3:30 a.m. in the fucking middle of winter doing scat all. Alarm bells start ringing, so I turn around and hope to see him still in the same spot using my peripheral vision. He was gone. I start to panic and pick up my walking pace, hoping that he actually lived in that area and had returned home. I turn my head again to see him across the road from me, walking in the same direction. Thousands of different scenarios start to play out in my mind, 99% of them telling me to run. I turn my head slightly to use my peripherals again. I catch him crossing the street towards me, so I decide to Usain Bolt the hell out of there. After running a good 100 meters I turn around to see him 20 meters behind me. He was chasing me. I finally reach my house after another good 100 meters, run into my driveway and to the back of my house. I stop and turn around to see that he was no longer there and stood there out of breath, laughing in relief. TLDR, got a gold medal in the 200 meters ghetto sprint. I was driving at about 11 p.m. with 2 exchange students home from Japan after a day at Cedar Point, which is this killer roller coaster theme park in Ohio. The easiest route home is by using 2-lane roads that go through all these small rural areas of it's boring, not lit, but at least there's no traffic. As we were driving home, I looked ahead and saw a truck, then I saw 2 lights heading towards me like someone was passing the truck. I did a double take and noticed the passing driver was coming right at me. I tried to slam on the brakes as fast as I could and stayed on the road. The other driver swerved off but corrected himself to stay on the road, hitting the passenger side head on. The wreck killed my passenger not more than a foot away from me. She was actually brain dead at the scene, left the girl in the back seat with back injuries, needed surgery twice, and I had a few large cuts from the wreck. The girls weren't so great at English at the time, so I was trying to stay as calm as I could, trying to translate for the paramedics. I spent the night in the hospital with my parents, who were awesome enough to drive up in the late hours to make me feel comfortable. After seeing someone go brain dead not more than a couple feet away was really messed up. I really appreciate learning another language and more so just being alive and in good health from the accident. The other girl was okay after 2 surgeries and is getting married next month. TLDR, nurse loses long tube, goes into my heart, almost die while they pull it out of my chest through my crotch. Medical error, resulting in having my crotch shaved by a very large man, had a bad infection which required 2 weeks of home antibiotic 4 treatments, which meant I needed a PICC line installed, which is this long rubber catheter that goes from my forearm through my arm, into my chest, right above my heart. While the nurse was installing my new tube, he let go of it and my body just sucked the tube/guide wire into my body. I ended up having the catheter coiled around my heart/some other place for a few hours. They took me into one of those live x-ray machine rooms and shaved my crotch, went up my thigh to get to my chest to pull out the wire, only every time they got close to my heart, I'd go tachycardic and they'd have to stop. That fun part lasted 3 hours, then they wheeled me to a room and told me not to move because my crotch hole might open and I would bleed out. One of those rays floating around here somewhere if anyone's interested. Shows the wire curled up near one of my art valves. Here is the x-ray showing the catheter and the guide wire curled up inside my chest near my heart. When I was about 5 or 6, I shared a bunk bed with my brother. I usually slept on the top, but on this particular night, I decided to sleep on the bottom. Not 30 minutes later, I hear a crash and feel wooden boards pounding my small body into the mattress. The wooden beams which kept the top bunk intact fell right across my throat and chest, blocking my airway. My brother began screaming for my parents and attempted lifting the bed. Sure enough, adrenaline kicked in and he lifted the bed frame just high enough for me to crawl out. I was fine other than some cuts and bruises. 2 stories, both involve me being stupid. 1, I was in the Dominican Republic, in a small village walking distance from Haiti, helping out a missionary, building things, fixing stuff, distributing clothes, getting people out of flood areas, etc. There was a cement underground cistern near one of the houses. It was very deep and had about 2 feet of stagnant water at the bottom. The opening was at ground level, covered by a piece of plywood. When I first arrived, someone even pointed it out to me as dangerous. About a week and a half later, I was backing away from something, I don't even remember what, and suddenly I was falling. I had stepped on the plywood and it had collapsed into the cistern. I managed to grab the edge with one arm, screwed up my shoulder, but it was smooth concrete and I was slipping. Everyone who saw it reacted very fast and pulled me out. 2. One time I was installing network equipment in a wiring closet that a contractor had set up. I don't know exactly what they did wrong, but I guess they had grounded one of the racks incorrectly. At one point during the install, I had my hands on both racks at once and suddenly realized I could not let go. Lights flickered, UPS beeped, I managed to fall backwards. I didn't think that much of it at the time and just finished up the repair, not touching 2 racks at the same time. My coworker later told me that it was dangerous to have electricity going from arm to arm because it could screw up your heart. TLDR, fell in a pit, got zapped. Edit, also been struck by lightning and in a really nasty car crash, luckily not at the same time. I've had multiple experiences myself. When I was 6 years old, I was fishing at a dam with my father. Well, one way or another I fell in the water and headed rapidly towards electric lines they used to keep fish from doing whatever. And my dad leapt in and grabbed me just in time. That was fun. When I was 16, my friends and I lived in a small town, big empty country roads. Well, we bought the fastest cars we could afford and Joy Road. There's been a few accidents that were scary, but the worst was taking a 90-degree turn at 80 miles per hour and sliding sideways through a cornfield for 50 yards or so with corn flying through the car as the windows were down, naturally. When we finally stopped, we got out and took inventory, 3 people, 1 seat belt on amongst us, all okay. Then we turn around and notice we stopped about 10 feet from a big boulder about 4x the size of the Daytona. Felt very mortal that night. New Year's Eve, 2005, 22 years old. Party with all my closest friends, drank quite a hefty amount of Jack Daniels in a series of drinking games, which apparently I was not doing well. Anyway, woke up hungover, drove home to go back to bed, woke up around 1 p.m. on New Year's Day, got some coffee and ate some food. Couple hours later I go take a shower, everything is cool, until I get out to dry off. I reach for the towel, hear a snap in my head, and my left arm goes totally limp, just rubbery and non-responsive. But quickly recovered. I chalked it up to low blood sugar or something at first. So I go upstairs and put clothes on, singing along to a song on the stereo. I notice in my mirror that half my face is slumped. I'm having a stroke. 5 days in the hospital, which luckily is very near my house at the time, and a bit of therapy and I am 100% normal. Awesomely enough. I was held up at knife point, by a man who seemed to be mentally ill. Wasn't sure what he was going to. In college during my last 3 years I lived in the ghetto of Boston as it was right next door to my campus, Roxbury for those of you who are familiar with the area. I was heading to the local liquor store with a friend of mine which is in the midst of the ghetto. As we were walking back, this 10-year kid ran by us and for some reason my friend went, is he running a marathon or something? There were these 3 people behind us and one of them apparently got annoyed with the comment for whatever reason and goes, I'm going to flip. I'm like Hurricane Katrina right now. He pulls out a knife on us and tells us to keep walking and shut up or he's going to kill us. I saw his eyes and he looked like he was either messed up beyond belief or freaking batshit crazy, or both. My friend talks back and goes, I'm not going to say a thing. We had no idea what was going on, but we eventually approached a main road and jetted out of there. They didn't go after us. Very weird, but scary incident. It was a Sunday and my family was gathered at my house for lunch and fun times. My uncle was working on his Harley outside the front porch while me and my cousins were playing on the upper floor. For reference, I was 12 and one of the oldest kids in the house. My mom was talking to my uncle from the upstairs window down to the porch when suddenly a white Grand Cherokee comes racing down the street and stops in front of the house. 4 dudes with guns step out of the car, intent on robbing the place. My uncle is an ex-cop and luckily had his gun on him. His thought process went something like this: if these guys get inside, they'll kill my family. These guys shall not pass. A firefight started right outside the house, 4 versus 1. My mom immediately shouted for all of us to get down and went running to her room, where my dad was sleeping. I got up and followed her as she burst through the door. I will never forget her words, Nelson, my dad, they're killing Hector, my uncle. My dad immediately woke up, took out his gun and went running to the window, aimed, and was ready to shoot, but the guys had already left. My uncle killed one of them and wounded another, and the 3 that were left escaped, only to be caught a few hours later. My uncle was shot in the leg and survived. He is a fucking boss. Played with hammer and bucket as a kid, back end of the hammer went into my eye. Doctor said it was close to my brain, but am not blind so all good. I was hiking in Colorado as a young child. The trail became so steep that, for the sake of most non-hikers, it turned into a series of switchbacks much like roads due to ascend mountains. I was on the trail above my parents walking in the opposite direction yet parallel to them. I decided to run down through the brush to meet them. My momentum built until I was not able to stop myself from running and would have ran straight off the side of the mountain into the river below, about a 700-foot drop. The only thing that saved me from this was my mom reaching out and grabbing my shirt. Twice, both involving explosions. First, it was about 4 years ago. I was at a friend's bonfire. Everything was cool, we were just drinking and having a good time. Someone dumped a bunch of leaves on the fire and in doing so didn't notice dropping a spray paint can in as well. I was sitting pretty close to it when the whole thing just exploded. I blacked out for a few moments and can only remember hearing it. It took me a second to realize what had happened after I came back to. I ended up with a flash burn over my entire face, my lips were blistered and my right forearm was covered in second-degree burns from when I instinctively brought it up to protect myself. Luckily I only ended up with one scar on my right wrist from the largest second-degree burn and can laugh about the whole thing now. I was looking toasty for a couple weeks though. Second time was about a year ago. I was late for work, driving down the freeway. As I get close to my exit I notice a giant plume of smoke ahead. As I get to my exit I notice that the smoke is coming from the underpass below. I exit and look to my left where I would normally go. There is a tanker truck completely flipped upside down and the entire underpass was on fire, at least it looked like it. The truck had gone off the freeway and fell into the intersection below it. If I would have been 1 to 2 minutes early I would have been right under the truck when it fell. Not going to go into super duper details because it's still hard to talk about sometimes. 1.5, almost 2 years ago, my then boyfriend became a crackhead. He sold all my things for crack and when I found out obviously I was mad, and I was going to pack up the little what I had left and leave. He started yelling at me. He called his mother to have her talk me into not leaving. When he heard me tell her that I had enough, he started to physically assault me. I still had his phone and begged his mother to call the cops. The devout Christian she was, she refused to do so. She sat there and listened to my cry and beg for help as he beat the shit out of me, pinning me down, punching me. I managed to wiggle out from under him and run to phone to call 911. I managed to tell the operator the address before he took my phone and threw it against the wall. He then grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed me in the side, and proceeded to keep wailing on me. I really don't remember much after being stabbed. Next thing I knew I woke up in the hospital. The doctors said I was lucky that the knife didn't seriously injure my organs. When I read the police report it said the cops came in to my ex still beating me. If the police didn't come when they did I probably would be dead. As always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, show your support. Leave your thoughts and opinions down below.